So for this example, let's go into our settings as our starting point, then our controllers. We've already added it to the account. This has already been zoned, so we're going to factory reset that. Now, this is something we're all familiar with. We're going to see that all lights in the very beginning. This is going to be your testing phase of those lights. We're going to make sure we have all of those proper connections. We haven't installed too much footage on one port or power supply. We're going to get an accurate calibration of the light count per port. So we can run through our testing patterns at this point to ensure that everything is working. So first, I like to run through the testing as I see all lights as my testing phase. With that, we'll go to patterns. Then we're going to open the legacy category, and we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. When we get down to the bottom, we're going to see some T-dash patterns. From T1 all the way down to this 9th, these are going to be your 9 testing patterns that I encourage you guys or your installation crews to use on that job prior to zoning it and walking the customer through the app. This is really going to show anything that may cause us to come back to this job after we leave. So we want to run through all those phases right now. So if there is something that needs our attention, we can address that now before we even involve the customer at all, helping us keep it as turnkey as possible. So first, I'm going to start with this red-white chase pattern. On all lights, what I should see is an alternating red-white across every light, and it's going to be chasing. For example, if I got to a jump or an area where I'm transitioning and I crossed my wires, maybe here I mixed up 2 of those grays. Well, it's going to work up until this point, and then down here I may see yellow and red instead of that white and red. So I know this is the area that I need to take my attention to before we move forward. In this case, we have all of our lights displaying the way they should. So we're going to move to the next pattern. The next one's going to be that red-white chase, but instead of it chasing, it's just going to be stationary. So that same pattern, but paused. This is another way for us to test that communication. We want to make sure we have good quality of communication throughout all of those connections. So if we didn't, maybe one of these lights gives us a little bit of a flicker or a twinkle, or it's a different color after a jump. That's going to help us to identify that. Everything here is still looking great. So I'm going to move down to pattern number 3, which is all white. Now, moving away from testing for our communication, doing this all white full brightness on every light is going to test our power. This is a visual way that I can identify if I've put too many lights on that port or too many lights on that power supply. So quick way to visually see that, I may see a strobe light effect, maybe at the last 20 feet of that port, for example. And that would be a good indicator I've put too many lights. I can make my adjustments from there. Then going down to number 4, this is going to be a white light with a 25% brightness every 7th light. So another way to communicate, ensuring that we're able to exclude those lights, getting to that desired spacing. So another way to test that communication. Then going down to number 5, this is going to be our warm white. Really good way to showcase that Kelvin setting that's already in the system, making sure that we have that warm hue of light that we're after. For example, if we had some discrepancies, we may be able to see that visually on a couple of those lights, if not a section, given this pattern is what we're using to test. And now we're going to test certain colors of those LEDs while also testing that communication in the process. So number 6, for example, is going to be a green comet. So that green light is chasing, also testing the quality of that green LED chip, and then communicating as we're moving, so those lights are responding at a different rate. Now moving down to number 7, this is going to test that blue. So we're testing that blue LED in those lights while also communicating with it being a chase. And we also have different brightness of these shadings of blue. So you're going to see some that look a little more bright, some more dim. Good way to test that quality that is in that Mark V light. And then especially on the landscape, this is going to be potentially your primary testing pattern for landscape lights. It's going to show maybe, for example, we had a long distance in between two lights that we did not transmit. With the new Super Ts, that's going to be irrelevant, but for the current time, maybe we need to transmit and receive that jump and we have not been able to, or we didn't think we needed to. This pattern will show that defect or that weak point because everything up until that point may be blue and then everything after will turn white. So you're going to select a blue test pattern, but you may see white lights in your landscaping. And that's a good indicator that we need to transmit and receive that jump. And then your warm white comparison. This is a really good one to showcase to the customer that range of Kelvin temperature they have to select for that warm or cool shading of white that they want. And then number 9 is the same, but we're going to add one effect, and this is going to be moving. So it's going to be more of a wave across that installation to really show what that Kelvin temperature or light of hue looks like on that surface. Maybe it's a metal building versus brick versus white soffit. Changing their desired Kelvin temperature may be indirect reflect of that surface that that light is bouncing off of. So those 9 are going to be your testing patterns that we should do on every installation before we begin to zone it and walk the customer through the app. Once we've gone through these like we just have and everything is displaying the way that we prompted it, now we can go to our settings, our controller, and then our zones. And here we see that all lights, we know all the lights are working, and this all lights zone is not zoned yet. This is more for our testing phase. So now I'm going to select in the top right corner, the add button, choosing to delete this all lights zone, and then naming it whatever I desire or the customer's preference. In this case, we'll just name it the front. We'll save that. And now depending on which port is selected, you're going to see the first 10 lights of that port illuminate. For example, this is port 2 starting here. I'm going to select the port depending on where I want my starting position to be, regardless of the wiring. So if I want it to start on the left side of this peak, that is port 3. That's what I want to select first. That's what I want for this example. I have my first and 10th light is blue. I'm going to have one of two options. I can tap on that number and enter a number to have it jump ahead, or I can chase it with that plus and minus button to that position. For this example, we'll go to the top of this peak, which is light 17, where that section ends and it's jumping down to the bottom. I don't want to include this bottom peak or I want to exclude it. So I'm going to end this step of the zoning here and press that back arrow. This is going to lock those lights into place or saving them into that zone. Now I can reopen that same zone because I want to add more lights to this zone, not create another zone. So how I'll do that is clicking on it. I'm going to see this page, top right corner, that plus sign. Now I have the option to add another port or additional lights from the same port. Right here we see it's 18, and the next light that's available is 18 because 1 through 17 is already assigned to a zone, and we can't be in two places at once. For this example, I want to exclude this elevation and peak from the zone. So what's illuminated now is what I want to exclude. So that's 18 to 37. I'm not going to save this I'm just using this to get my light count for this purpose. And what I'll do is my starting position will be 38. And then it's showing me anything less than 18, I can't save, and anything over. So we'll go up one start position to 38. And now we see this blue light illuminated above us because I've excluded from this point to this point out of the zone. But I want this elevation and that initial starting point to be together. So now we'll chase our light of our end position to that very last light of the section that I want to include in that first part. And now I'll go back. And now I'm going to see port 3 two times, but as two different colors. Because it's in two isolated areas that we're joining together. And we've excluded this center. And as a result, if we chase those lights, they'll come over this blue section to the peak and then jump right over to this yellow section. And that is their start and stop boundary of where they communicate. Maybe this area here, I want to control separately, and that's why I've excluded it. So if I go back and I see this page with the name of my zone, this is where I can add another zone. Maybe this will be the lower. Maybe we had an upper and a lower run of lights on this installation on the front of the house, and I want to control the lower separate from the top. So now I'm going to select that same port, which is port 3, and then incorporate that same section that we excluded before. There we are. So now from light 18 to light 37, that is its own zone. I will go back and we can see our two zones here. As I select it, they'll illuminate together, showing you that these lights that are lit up are in the same zone. And then going back to our lower, we can see that. How we can apply that is if we went to play a pattern, we'll go red, white, chase, but I'm going to change my animation to a paint. So one of my favorite ways to show how those lights are chasing. So I will save that, but for this purpose, it's not necessary. We can just preview that on our zones, and let's go front. So now we'll see exactly how those lights will chase based on how I just zoned it. So now from the top peak, it jumps right to the right, completely bypassing this lower peak here. Or we can deselect that front and just apply it to the lower. So now that I have both zones running and the check mark is for your pattern selection of that zone, you're going to see these two areas are going to have their own start and ending point. So depending on how you want that to display, or one area, maybe a window pop out, they want that independent control over. That way it's not shining through the window of the kids when it's time for bed, or for whatever other preferences they have, this is how we can easily isolate something from the same strand or incorporate lights that are from different ports. You have that open envelope that is proprietary to JellyFish. So another way we can zone this, if we were to delete these two, go back to our zones, and here's that lower. When you try to delete it without another zone being made, it's not going to let you. But if we go to add, save that, then we can delete our initial zone. Or just go into that one because it's the only one, and we can just edit that. So if we wanted to incorporate all of these lights, we know they're on port 3, we're going to make them all one zone, or part of the one zone we're making. So on port 3, we have 49 lights. They are starting in this central area here. So that means this bottom is running out and to the left while the top is going to the right. Well, I want them to all flow consistently. So I'm going to reverse this, making light 49 the start position in the display. Now I'll go back. I want to add more lights to this existing zone. So I'll hit the plus sign now. And now I'll find the port that is this section here, which it starts here on port 2. I'm going to chase those all the way around so we can incorporate all of our lights. Or tapping on that, maybe we'll jump to light 80, for example, and so on. We'll come back a little bit. So 33 lights. We'll go back to save. And back again. And then when we select, go all the way back to our legacy red, white chase pattern number 1. And if I hit play on that now, while changing my animation to a paint, we can see that the right side here, the end of that port, the very last light, is actually the starting light in that pattern display. So our physical wire is starting in the middle of this display, but our lights display from start position, light 1 on the right side, all panning to the left continuously. So regardless of our physical wiring, we can have that aesthetic wash or that pan of light in that preference to you or your customers. So then this top line is finishing here. So let's separate these so that they're always going to go the same way. So I'll go back into my zones. And then here we have a good indicator. Light 1 is yellow, light 33 is yellow. So I know we start, we get to the other side, and then it's installed coming back around. But I don't want it to display that way. So I'm going to take this yellow light all the way back to the last light of this elevation, which is one more back right here. So this is the last light in this elevation. So I'm going to end it here so that it will jump to the right side, go to the upper elevation, and then come around. So everything is chasing right to left, regardless of the wiring. So 1 to 14, we want to save that. Edit zone, adding another port. So now that we have port 2 selected, light 15 will start, and we're going to chase our end position to the last colored light. Now, before I hit the back arrow to save, I'm going to tap reverse direction. Since this is currently going to the right, tapping that will make it go to the left. So now if we go back and display that pattern again, let's go to a paint. And now we can see how that light's going to chase. Again, starting from the right side, it's going to pan all the way going to the left in one consistent direction. We won't have that jumping back and forth. It's going to get all the way to our very last light and then coming back towards us.
Hey
And
Q,
this
could you
is
speed
something you
that
can
pattern
adjust
up a
this.
bit for us?
I was just about to say that. And you can speed up this process. So if you have a bigger installation, you can take that speed and turn it up. When you do adjust your speed, it will restart. So now we'll see it from the right side. I'll take that speed up, and now we're chasing this way. So one way that I find that it's really easy visually to see how those lights are chasing, making sure that we've zoned it directionally and in order of how that customer may want it displayed. Meaning, if we have two elevations, are we starting with the top going to the bottom, from the bottom up to the top, or are they both running in tandem of each other? And that's all fully customizable, all within the app. And then once they do have multiple zones named and selected, you'll be able to see those here, toggling each one individually or editing that zone or the pattern that you're applying to that specific zone. While we're on the subject, are there any zoning questions or scenarios that you guys are currently going through that you may just want some insight on? And keeping in mind, all lights is an indicator that the system has not been zoned. So if we do see all lights, we're going to encourage that that system gets zoned so that those lights can display accurately. And if we're not comfortable or familiar with the zoning, it's something that we can easily practice on with a controller and a strand of lights. We could plug those lights in right at the port, and we could sit in the comfort of our garage, get familiar with it, even bring it in the house. You know, some areas you don't want to be outside, it's a little toasty. So bring it in the house, sit on the couch, plug a strand in, and you can even break up that one strand into multiple
Quentin, I have a
zones.
question.
Get familiar with it. Yes, sir.
How many, is there a maximum number of zones you can have?
Well,
I've
in
got
the
a,
past there was.
I've got a gentleman with 12 right now. It's 420 feet on his house total, and he's got all his dormers separate. And he says he's got 12 zones, and it's all working well.
15
Yep, I've
zones
seen
is
up
the
to
current
15
limit.
zones.
How many?
15.
15, okay.
That is the current limit, but we've been working with engineering requesting that we bump that up. We just haven't had many use cases that pushed the envelope of that, but we're starting to come across more of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and having a lot of zones or multiple or too many zones, I don't see as a route to cause you issues. It'd be the complete opposite. If we did not zone it at all, I see that being a potential issue down the line, especially on certain patterns that either won't work or display accurately. But too many isn't my concern. Not zoning definitely is.
Hey, Quentin, I have a quick question.
Yes.
We have had where our customers have large zones, like they have just large homes, and the way that they wanted to zone it did include large sections, let's say 400 lights or so. You guys have expanded how much can be in a zone. Do you know if that affects how many, when I would try to do the lighting for accent lighting, where you individually address and assign the lights for more custom or accent lighting, I found that it would not work well when I had really big zones and I was trying to make it have every light be a specific color to do something really cool. Do you know if extending what could be included in a zone may have extended the capability there, or have you even ran into that on your guys' end?
I'll address that one, Q. I got some firsthand knowledge on it the other day. So we actually identified some bugs and issues when they went to expanding it to 1600 lights.
Okay.
So they've resolved a number of those, and custom accents was one of the areas where they found some issues. So what we did to test it is we built a board with a whole bunch of lights, you know, consecutively together, almost like a grid, and went through and even tried to like create drawings and things with it, and really pushing the boundaries of what you can do with the custom accents, and believe that we've resolved a number of the issues, and hopefully all of them, but you know, more may sneak up on us, but we do believe that with that expansion, it has opened up and cleared up some other issues.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Great point to bring up. Is there any other points anybody wanted to touch on around the subject? All right. Well, that's my time with you guys.